Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about UFO sightings and alien encounters from my home state, Wisconsin. As always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe as it really helps my channel out. So without further ado, let's get into it. A UFO Tale from the Ashland Daily Press, Wisconsin, November 20th, 2003. 50 years ago, on the evening of November 23, 1953, a mysterious occurrence happened over Lake Superior. An Air Defense Command Ground Intercept Radar controller at the Trox Airport Base became alerted to an unidentified target over the Sioux Locks. The alert was sounded, and First Lieutenant Felix Moncla, Jr. and Second Lieutenant Robert Wilson were dispatched in their F-89 Sea Scorpion jet from nearby Kinross Field. Ground control was watching two blips on the radar screen. The F-89 was chasing this object at speeds of 500 miles per hour. As the F-89 began to close the gap, the UFO accelerated out over Lake Superior. The two blips became one blip. The ground control thought Lieutenant Moncla had flown over the target, and they thought the two blips would become separated as the plane passed it. To the ground control's amazement, the single blip flushed off the screen and was totally clear of any return at all. The ground control frantically tried to contact the F-89 by radio, but there was no response at all from Lieutenant Moncla's aircraft. Ground control dispatched an emergency search and rescue team. The last sighting on the radar was about 70 miles off of Keweenaw Point in Upper Michigan at an altitude of 8,000 feet, 160 miles northwest of the Sioux Locks. Not a trace of the aircraft or the two pilots were ever found. Surprisingly, no debris, no oil slick, nothing was ever found. The Air Force changed its story a couple of times about this incident, finally stating that the F-89 exploded at high altitude, but strangely ignoring the fact that this would have left a lot of debris on the lake's surface. Finally, NICAP, National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena, found out that there was no mention of the Lieutenant Felix Moncla mission chasing an unidentified target. It was completely obliterated from the official records. On the other hand, Project Blue Book case files simply list the case as an accident. Now, 50 years later, we still really wonder what happened that evening of November 23, 1953, of Lieutenant Felix Moncla and Lieutenant Wilson and the Scorpion F-89 C jet. Off the record, speculation was the object was a huge UFO, and it took the whole plane and crew that fateful evening. It will probably be many years, more or less, that the world will finally see disclosure on UFOs worldwide. This area here in Upper Wisconsin is a hotspot of UFO activity. Take a look one night and watch the skies around here. Close encounters in Waukesha County. The Freeman, Waukesha, Wisconsin, October 6, 2008. Close encounters reported but hardly confirmed UFO sightings happen regularly across area. Waukesha. Although many people may not know it, Waukesha County may have an unidentified flying object problem, or at least an eagerness to tell others about lights in the sky. Almost as long as Waukesha has existed, there have been newspaper stories and self-filed reports by residents of strange lights in the sky, occasional crop circles, and even reports of abduction on the eastern edge of the county. Madison resident Noah Voss is a ufologist who recently wrote a book on the history of UFO encounters across Wisconsin, and he said that the Milwaukee area, including Waukesha County, is one of the top spots for UFO reports in the state. It would be pure speculation to say how many confirmed UFO sightings there are per year in the state, but Wisconsin ranks quite high in UFO sightings, he said. In documented sightings, some would say more than New Mexico. As a ufologist, Voss travels the state investigating claims of UFO sightings and trying to verify them through eyewitness accounts, and seeing whether or not there is a meteorological explanation or if the report is a hoax. However, due to limited resources, Voss said he can't visit them all. This area is the 5th hottest area for UFO sightings in the state, Voss said, with Long Lake being the area with the most. Part of the high number of sightings could be attributed to more acceptance of UFO reports in Wisconsin, Voss said. UFO sightings in Wisconsin predate written history. Voss said some of the first accounts include the Chippewa Indian tribe's story of the Starman, who was lost on Earth and lived with the tribe for some time until he was able to return home. Since then, accounts have ranged from a late 19th century account of a dirigible-type craft floating over Waukesha and Milwaukee. Voss said to this day it is still unknown exactly what the ship was or where it came from, and whether or not it was intergalactic in origin. According to the website www.ufowisconsin.com, there are numerous accounts of sightings in Waukesha since the 1960s. The latest one was reported March 17th in Delavan. Those who make the reports are kept anonymous on the site, but most describe seeing either lights in the sky or triangular crafts hovering overhead. A January 19th, 2007 account in the website from Mukwonago read, "We were all outside by a bonfire just hanging out. Then we all saw a bright light/flash in the sky. We looked up and we saw 2 objects moving in the southwest part of the sky. They were in the shape of a triangle. They had red flashing lights on them. They just sat there for a couple of minutes and then they took off." Voss said he cannot confirm if the incidents are true or not, though he said he always considers them possible. He said many people believe they'll be pegged as crazy for reporting a UFO, which could just mean a weather balloon or meteor. Another website called UFOs Northwest has several reports of alien encounters reported throughout the county. In 1982, a New Berlin man claimed he and his aunt encountered reptilian beings who had landed their craft in a field. A 1973 account from Brookfield says that a person there claimed to have seen the Greys, a believed alien race often pictured with large foreheads and big eyes. Both accounts are again anonymous, and investigator notes listed after the accounts don't classify either experience as authentic and does not give possible rational explanations. For Waukesha County police officers, they tend to find themselves on the front lines of UFO defense. Officers from across the county have investigated reports of lights in the skies for decades. Pewaukee Police Sergeant John Maloney said that about 15 years ago, during a cold third shift night, a police officer from another jurisdiction called in a UFO sighting, to which he and officers from across the county responded. He saw the bright lights standing still in the sky. He remembers the strange feeling of watching the lights. And after 5 minutes later, those lights came to life, in the form of an oncoming airplane that, because of its initial angle, appeared to stand still. There has probably been a half dozen times I have had these calls, and it's meteor showers and really big meteorites going overhead, he said. On one occasion, I had a face-to-face with the person who reported it, and I let him know that I saw it too. You tell them, you're not nuts, because it was something. It was a meteorite going across the sky. Lieutenant Kevin Schmidt of the Mukwonago Police Department said he has also had reports of lights in the sky, and like Maloney and other officers, he has to find the rational explanation the weirdness in the Waukesha County skies. You call General Mitchell International Airport Air Traffic Control and they'll tell us if it's weather balloons, he said. That's pretty much the only thing we can do. Crop circles in Tilden. From the Chippewa Herald, Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, July 20th, 2004. Chippewa County farmer is skeptical. Tilden. There have been many things in Francis Swoboda's field in the town of Tilden. Barns, animals, and of course crops. But on Monday, paranormal investigators Chad Lewis and Terry Fisk of Eau Claire asked if he knew that there were crop circles in his field not more than a mile from his home. Crop circles are a modern mystery and a source of controversy. They consist of flattened crops in simple circles like the ones in Tilden or in extremely elaborate patterns. They appear suddenly, and to some, mysteriously. Some people have speculated that they are made by alien spacecraft. Others have called them a hoax made by pranksters. Swoboda just calls them a little bit annoying. It all started when May Chi High graduate Adam Prince was driving by Swoboda's field and happened to see what looked like a crop circle on Saturday. "I just looked at it. I could see something up in the field," he said. "I wasn't really looking for anything. I wasn't even sure what it was, but when you go by, you can kind of see something out there." Prince decided not to investigate on his own. He searched the internet and discovered that Lewis and Fisk were both from Eau Claire and investigated such phenomena. He emailed them to let them know the location. Lewis and Fisk have investigated dozens of paranormal occurrences and are both known nationally and locally. They spent Monday afternoon investigating, measuring, and pondering in Swoboda's field. They found there was already a footpath between the oat and a nearby clover field that led to the circles. It's unknown whether the creators of the circles or someone else made the path. The formation consists of 3 circles linked together by an approximately 5-foot wide path. The middle circle is 65 feet in diameter, while the 2 smaller ones are each roughly 54 feet in diameter. Lewis says the crop circles appear to have been formed a couple days ago because plants are already starting to spring back up. No footprints were visible in the dirt surrounding the area, though he acknowledges that Monday's rain could have erased any tracks. Various existing crop circle theories include government airplanes, extraterrestrials, electrical or magnetic phenomena, and humans. To Lewis, who has seen several reputed crop circles in the Midwest, the Tilden circles seem a bit rough around the edges compared to even some he's seen. They also discovered that before the circles were made, a straight, 8-inch wide path was made through the center of the area, intended to be circles. This might be a possible way for circle makers to maneuver without having yet made the circles. Lewis said there have been 6 reported crop circles in the past few years in Wisconsin, but none in the Chippewa County area. The pair took samples of oat plants from inside and outside the circles. They will be tested for various properties that could provide more insight. If there are any strange results, we'll take soil samples, Lewis said. They also measure the area for radiation and for magnetic activity, which are sometimes found near unexplained phenomena. It's believed that hoax crop circles are created by at least 2 people working like a compass. One person stands in the desired center of a circle, holding a rope to which is attached to a person walking. The walker has a board on the ground to which is attached ropes. As the walker proceeds forward, pivoting around the center person, he or she steps down on the board, lifting it by the ropes and stepping as plants are pushed down and a circle is created. As the circle is formed, the pivoting rope is shortened and the circle works inward. The circles in Tilden could be made with a large board and 30 feet of rope. Lewis said it would be difficult to get in and out of here without being seen, but not impossible. Lewis said, "We're here with more questions than answers." Swoboda believes that it's only kids who are trying to stage a hoax. "I had hay to unload if they wanted work. They could have done that instead," he said with a chuckle. "You could see where they looked like they were trying to be sneaky, but they weren't," Swoboda said. "Morons. At least if they were going to do it right." Swoboda will lose as much as 4 acres of the oats he uses to feed his dairy herd because of the damage. "That's what makes you so mad. Usually the fields don't get this good," he said. This year's oat crop was particularly good because the growing season was long and the oat plants hadn't yet been knocked down by a storm. Now Swoboda might have to redo the fields because the weeds are already starting to grow up where the oat plants were flattened in the crop circle formation. But Swoboda looks at the crop circles like any of life's little mishaps. "There's a lot worse things that could happen," Swoboda said. Delavan resident makes claim of UFO sighting. Elkhorn Independent, Elkhorn, Wisconsin, October 13, 2008. While most people associate Halloween with ghosts, monsters, and other various spooks, one Delavan resident had a different experience this Halloween. On October 31st, Mary Hennerly, 49, of Autumn Lane in Delavan, reported seeing something strange in the sky as she returned home from Darien. It was just before 7 p.m., and the entire incident lasted just a few seconds. Hennerly reported seeing what looked like a shooting star, which she has plenty of experience seeing in the past from her balcony. What was strange about this star was its path. Instead of moving in a downward motion toward the Earth, it was moving very rapidly parallel to the Earth. "It just caught my eye," she said. "It had a big tail behind it, like an exhaust or vapor trail. Within 3 or 4 seconds, it was gone." Hennerly's 2 children were in the car with her, but neither of them looked up in time to see anything. Hennerly has no pictures or video to share. She said she is not looking for attention or a big payday. She just wants an explanation. "I wasn't a believer in UFOs," she said. "Now I'm not so sure." While now open to that possibility, she also seemed interested in whatever natural explanation there might be for what she saw, and she is interested to know if anyone else saw anything strange that night. Local police departments in the city of Delavan, the town of Delavan, and the village of Darien do not have any reports on record of any unusual sightings on October 31st. So Hennerly may have been the only one to witness the phenomena. "It was like nothing I had ever seen before," she said. She described the object as round, about the size of a star. She was certain it was not an airplane or jet in her opinion. It was not at all that far up in the sky, about 5,000 feet in her estimation. Richard Dreiser, Urich's Observatory Public Information Director, offered a few man-made and natural explanations. He said no one at the observatory reported seeing anything unusual on October 31st. Man-made possibilities include the International Space Station or another satellite, though after hearing the full description of what Hennerly saw and where she saw it, Dreiser thought a natural explanation was more likely. According to Dreiser, we are currently in the midst of a meteor shower from the Orionids group of meteors. The shower peaked around October 21st, but is visible for about 3 weeks from October 2nd to November 7th. "The timing fits perfectly," Dreiser said. "Most people know about the meteor showers in August," he said. "Fewer know about these because of the colder weather." Dreiser also said it would be very difficult to accurately pinpoint where a meteor came from while in a moving vehicle. The parallel path of the object Hennerly described did not change his mind. He was fairly confident the object was a meteor. Every year, meteor showers occur as a result of debris from a comet's tail falling to Earth. These pieces of debris can light up the sky, but burn up and become microscopic bits before falling to Earth. Meteors that leave a crater in the Earth are actually pieces of asteroids. Dreiser also said another meteor shower from the Taurids group could also have been visible that night. Many times, meteor showers overlap, and the one from Taurids is visible from September 25th to November 25th. Eyes on the Skies and the Web. From the Sheboygan Press, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, September 4, 2001. Couple sets up site to share information on Wisconsin UFOs. John Hope and his wife Jennifer are intelligent, inquisitive people with a penchant for the unusual. From their Erie Avenue dining room, the command center for UFO Wisconsin, they can prove it. "I've always been fascinated with UFOs," John Hope said. "I could never believe we were the only ones. Now," he says, "in a state second only to New Mexico in UFO sightings, others fascinated with UFOs and people who have spotted UFOs themselves will be able to share their experiences." Their new website, devoted specifically to UFOs spotted in the Wisconsin skies, will allow people to share information so a common denominator can be found. "We're not saying UFOs are extraterrestrials," Hope said. But if enough people share their information, we may be able to determine just why so many UFOs are seen in Wisconsin. Hope was 15 when he spotted his first UFO. He remembers it like it was yesterday, standing on North Point Beach in Sheboygan. He watched as an orange ball of light radiated from the water. I thought it was a lantern that had fallen from someone's boat, Hope recalls. I waded toward it, but the water got too deep. As I turned around and looked back, it had risen out of the water and was hovering a few feet above, illuminating Lake Michigan. That first sighting seemed to stick with him. Since then, he has seen other UFOs, including a July sighting while at a UFO convention in Dundee near Long Lake. This UFO sighting was the most spectacular one I've ever seen, and one of the biggest ones I've ever even heard of, Hope said. There were 50 eyewitnesses who saw 3 orange craft that appeared over the horizon almost in front of us. One of the objects flashed 3 bright pulses of white light, almost as if it was signaling to us. The UFO, he said, appeared at approximately 10 p.m. and continued its light show until well into the night. Hope has been studying various reports on unidentified flying objects since he was a boy. He and his wife are members of the Milwaukee-based UFO 2U Club. The club, he said, is a gathering of people who don't think you're nuts if you say you've seen a UFO. Their new interactive internet site will provide a similar outlet. The site lists detailed reports of 165 UFO sightings according to county. Sheboygan County has had 2, one just last week and one in 1966. UFO spotters can file a report, find out about UFO clubs, see photographs of recorded UFO sightings in the state, and find other UFO-related material. People need to look at it and make their own determination, Hope said. Let viewers look at the data accumulated, and maybe someone can come up with a plausible theory. Hope says after investigating UFOs for 20 years, there has to be some correlation. Nothing had been compiled in a central database, he said, with UFO Wisconsin. That will all change. Maybe it will be your son or daughter who will figure it out, Hope said. The common people will be able to look at this site and understand it. The Wausau Daily Herald, Wausau, Wisconsin, August 29, 2004. Jury still out on origin of farmers' crop circles. Investigators look for signs that formations were a hoax. Town of Wausau. Scott Warden won't say for sure whether he believes in the paranormal, but he doesn't dismiss the idea either. That's why Warden, a longtime dairy farmer, agreed to have 2 paranormal investigators inspect 6 crop circles Saturday that were found by a farmhand Monday in Warden's barley field. Everybody thinks I'm nuts, but I just want to know what caused it. I know cows more than I know circles, said Warden, 37, through a sheepish grin. Warden runs the farm with his brother, Tim, and father, Daryl. Paranormal investigator Tim Fisk of Eau Claire said he would first and foremost be looking for evidence that showed the formations were a hoax. You can usually tell how the crops have been laid down if there is damage to the crops, said Fisk, 49, who in July investigated crop circles found in Chippewa Falls. Usually plants are bent, not broken in crop circles, whose causes are difficult to explain. In obviously hoax circles, the grains are broken. The 2 arrived at the site around 9 a.m. Saturday morning with cameras and tape measures. They also brought a Geiger counter, which measures radioactivity, and a tri-field meter, an instrument that measures magnetic, electrical, and radio waves, as well as microwaves. They were disappointed to find that the field had been harvested with a combine after the circles were created. It also appeared that many people had walked through the field. We like to compare the crop inside the circles to the crop outside the circles, said paranormal investigator Chad Lewis of Eau Claire, who has been investigating crop circles for 10 years. Obviously, since this has been cut, we can't do that. The circle's proximity to the road, about 50 feet, could indicate a hoax. Maybe somebody wants it to be noticed. Plus, it's easy access, said Fisk, who, along with Lewis, hosts a radio program called The Unexplained that airs weekly in the Eau Claire area. Even the lack of activity found on the investigators' tri-field meter could indicate a sham, but the duo won't dismiss the phenomenon as such at this point. The waves the meter detects could have dissipated between the time the crop circles form and today, Lewis said. Town chairman Jim Reel, who was looking at the crop circles Saturday morning, is convinced the crop circles are the real deal. I used to listen to Art Bell on the radio all the time, Reel said. I don't think this is a hoax. I'm a grain farmer. When you walk through a field like this, you leave footprints, and you can still see them 3 days later. There aren't any footprints around here. No tracks to show where people would have come in. Bell hosted a nationally syndicated all-night radio show called Coast to Coast AM in the 1990s, and from time to time from 2001 to 2003. The show, which is still on the air with a different host, deals with tales of the supernatural, the paranormal, and weird. Crop circles, most of which are found to be easily explainable hoaxes, can be formed with a rope, a board, and a couple of people. You attach the rope to the board, step on the board, and move in a circle, Fisk said. It usually takes 2 people, with one person standing on the end of the board at the center of the circle. The crop circle investigation won't stop with Saturday's probe, which is considered preliminary work by the paranormal investigators. They say they'll also check with Wisconsin Public Service for reports of power outages in the area around the same time the crop circles were formed. They'll also ask airport officials whether pilots reported other circles in the area, and find out if police received word of any UFO sightings. Later, they'll send in soil and crop samples to BLT Crop Circle Investigations in Cambridge, Massachusetts for testing. Results from the lab work will not be available until spring of 2005. UFOs of the Kickapoo. Epitaph News, Lafarge, Wisconsin, October 29, 2009. A woman from Reedstown. In summer about 1963 or 1964, I was in a truck with my father-in-law coming back from the feed mill in Gays Mills, heading toward our farm. He was driving. It must have been about 3:30 or 4 p.m. We were at the top of a hill about to go down into the valley where our farm was. Suddenly he said, "It sure is getting dark," and then the truck motor killed and we stopped dead on the gravel road. We looked above us and saw an enormous object above us. It was just over the treetops. It stretched from where we were to being over the barn and our valley. That made it about half a mile long. It was about 2 stories tall. There were windows above that had changing lights. There were beams of light coming down out of the craft and hitting our barn. It made no noise, although you could feel a sort of pulsation. I remember feeling the pulsation on the metal dashboard of the pickup truck. My father-in-law got out of the truck and looked in amazement at it. "What in the hell is that?" he said. I don't remember how long we looked at it, maybe 5 minutes. After a bit, the beams of light stopped hitting our barn. Then the object raised up a bit and shot off to the northwest, disappearing in just a few seconds. My father-in-law said, "Don't say anything about this to anybody, or they will think we are nuts." I never did, and he never did either. I never even told my husband. About 3 weeks after that thing was there, our cows started throwing calves. We called our vet and he called in the state vet, and they concluded that the feed we were giving the animals had absolutely no vitamins, minerals, or anything. But we grew it right on our farm, and the feed before was always okay, and the feed afterward was always okay. It was just the feed, including the corn and the silage, that was in the barn when that thing was overhead that day was not good. That never happened before, and it never happened again. 45 cows lost their calves. We had to give the cows vitamin A, D, and E until they became pregnant again, and we got new feed. A year and a half later, my father-in-law got throat cancer, and he had to take radiation treatments in La Crosse. He would come home quite sick, and on one of these times coming home, he suddenly brought up our seeing the object in the sky. He said, "I'm not crazy, and I know that you aren't crazy, and I know what we saw." He added that he also had seen something like that years earlier when he was a young boy. He had never told that to anybody before he told me. From the National UFO Reporting Center, occurred 7/25/09, Cashton, Wisconsin. I called the hotline to report this today, 7/28/09. Saturday night, July 25th, around 9:40 p.m. Central Time Zone, my husband and I were driving to our house on a ridgetop in western Wisconsin. I noticed to the north a light that was heading southeast. This light was white. I watched it for a few seconds and then remarked to my husband, "Look at that light." But it does not appear to be a plane. It has no blinking lights. The light was lower than a satellite, but because it was a ways in front of me, it appeared to be airplane height. The light went off to the east and disappeared. We drove into our driveway and got out of the car. My husband went into the house to let the dogs out, and I stood there. I looked up, and from the north came a red light toward me. I called to my husband, "Look." We both watched the light approach us. It appeared to be low, and it was red, round, not blinking, and no sound. Its size was bigger than a star, medical helicopter size. We watched 15 seconds or so as it headed in a southeast direction. I started to walk the dogs to the north, looked up, and there was another light. I called to my husband, "It's back." It came from the north, red, low, round, no sound, not blinking, flying steady. It headed in a southeast direction above me, same dimensions as the first light, really identical. Both sightings from the house were just a few minutes apart. More UFOs of the Kickapoo, from Epitaph News, Lafarge, Wisconsin, October 26, 2000. Lawrence Valley Spook Lights. A few months ago, Bernice Schrader of Iroquois, formerly of Lafarge, sent me a letter telling me about the famous Lawrence Valley Spook Lights outside of Lafarge. I will quote liberally from her letter in this article about the lights. "The rock is located on property I now own, and last fall I climbed up and took pictures. At 79, it will likely be my last trip up there." She encounters an old friend, Laverne Lawrence, and asks him about the mystery. He is the youngest son of Errol Lawrence, who lived in the log cabin in the valley. Laverne recalls a date of October 13th when the light usually appeared. He described it as that of a moon. It moved up and along the top of the hill. It would reappear and follow the same path over and over as he described it. The hill was now covered with trees, but the light never went behind a tree. He found this significant. He remembers people coming to the valley to watch for its appearance several nights in the fall. They were not successful, but he recalls after they left, it appeared. Accompanying the appearance was a strange feeling which he described as the hair standing up on the back of his neck. She recalled a description of the light seen by Don Potter. The story contrasts somewhat with the story Dan Potter tells. He, his son Larry, and a friend were riding their mules in the valley in the fall of that year coon hunting. He describes seeing two lights resembling yard lights. They didn't seem to move. Their location seemed in the direction of Spook Rock rather than the hill, as Laverne tells it. Don also tells of the strange, spooky, and strong urge to get out of there. She reflects on the cause of the lights. And what is my take on these apparent unusual and abnormal occurrences? I don't know. I doubt that these events would evoke scientific interest to search for an explanation of such abnormal happenings, but one never knows. Could these exceptional sensory experiences affect one and not another? Is it a phenomenon related to the hill country, and why limited to this one valley and one specific time of year? I would suspect this will take its place along with UFO sightings and haunted houses. That continued experiences, as in recent times by the Potters, will keep the myth alive. And while one may find it fascinating, it will likely remain one of those mysteries unexplained and unsolved. A woman from Viroqua. At City Hollow Park, I walk my dog in the evenings. About 3 years ago, I noticed for the first time a big blue and white light which is circular in shape. This is bigger than a star, but nowhere as big as the moon. It is not a satellite because it wobbles or dances when it moves. I don't see it every night, but at least 2 or 3 times a month. When I see it, I think it senses that I see it because it will come and go numerous times for a half hour or more. Yes, I have seen more than one at the same time. This is another part of the story. One evening in June of this year, 2000, I just had a feeling to go out there. I walked with my dog out into the center of a cornfield. This was early summer, so the corn was not knee-high. I looked up and I saw 3 lights moving across the sky in the shape of a triangle. Then I realized that there was an enormous craft between the lights. It was like the dark sky was moving overhead. It was a beautiful night, very clear. Then, right out of the center of the triangle came a light, like the ones on the points and the ones I had seen night after night. It went out and to the left and down, and then it flew in sync with the triangle. This triangle was as big as 2 barns, flattened out. It was maybe a couple 100 feet in the air. It moved very slowly. I was running in the field. Why, I don't know, but the triangle was barely ahead of me. I stopped running when I got to the woods. The triangle kept going southeast, toward Reedstown. I saw this thing just once, but I have seen the smaller lights since then. Lights in the Night, from the Belleville Recorder, Belleville, Wisconsin, October 17, 2000. What would you do if you saw lights and unexplainable sights in the skies overhead? Most certainly would not keep such an experience to themselves. You would want to compare experiences with another human being. But what if the experiences were with something that may not have been human? Something that defied description. Would you still share them? You probably would, just like some Belleville residents did 14 years ago. In 1986, the skies around Belleville didn't make sense in a human way. They had the crystal clear qualities of fall, but there were objects in that crisp air that defied any explanation. There were sights that shouldn't have been. The sightings took place over several months, thus there was not just one odd evening. In one sighting, Belleville police officer Glenn Kasmar, still a respected member of the force, was patrolling the village. The police department had a ride-along program for citizens at that time, and Jeff Furseth was in the squad car with Officer Kasmar. The date was January 15th. They noticed odd-looking lights in the sky to the south of Belleville. The two drove to Quarry Road, which intersects Highway 69 just south of town and is a high point on a hill where the two could get a better view of the lights. It was very late. Glenn turned the squad car onto Quarry Road, and Jeff Furseth's remark was, "Are you seeing the same thing as me?" There was a brilliant light out in the valley next to the desolate road. The light defied precise description. It was a different light and brilliant beyond description. The brilliance confused them. How far away was it? How big? It didn't seem to have dimensions they could understand. They aimed the squad car's searchlight at the thing. That did nothing. They got on police radio and called the Dane County police dispatcher who, after some additional conversation, called the Dane County Municipal Airport. Their radar was down, but Chicago had taken over and they did confirm there was something at those approximate coordinates. The Greene County Sheriff's Department was contacted, and they progressed to the scene. The two men watched for over 45 minutes, and then, as strange as the light was, it began to move away. It flew, or moved, or disappeared, and suddenly it was gone. The Greene County patrolman saw this also. No one could explain what they were observing. The scene didn't match anything familiar. A few months later, on a Friday night, Lavone Fredig was getting ready to join friends at Belleville's popular Friday night fish restaurant, Borland's. She would be meeting friends who were coming from Mount Horeb. Putting on her makeup, she looked out a window that faced south from her house. There was something in the sky, and it defied description. The object had an odd shape, almost like a barrel or fuselage without wings. There were similar shapes near it, although they were much smaller. They didn't move and were motionless in the sky. She called her son Bill to ask what he thought it was. All of a sudden, the largest object shot away from the others with unbelievable speed. The smaller objects began to disappear, almost like puffs of smoke, and then they were gone. When the friends arrived, they had seen the same thing. There was no explanation to be shared. There were no military craft in the area when the matter was later investigated. They were objects without understanding or identification. There were dozens of other sightings in the coming months, but nothing quite so well documented. There were other sightings in other parts of the county as well. A few years after the investigations were completed, or should we say finished because no answers were produced, a group of civic leaders thought that Belleville had as rightful a claim to UFO capital of the world as any other. They started a community event to celebrate the possible visit from another world. Obviously, this is strange stuff, defying description and more than a bit scary. Thus, UFO Day is held close to Halloween, when visits from other worlds before and after become a commonplace part of our culture. Belleville can truly claim that its Halloween has a deeper chasm of the unknown than anyone else's. Who knows? Under those masks and not-so-humanly costumes, there could be visitors from another world. Strange and unexplainable occurrences do happen the world over. They're not figments of the imagination by any means. Scientists have for years said that these unexplainable phenomena need more attention. The French government for 21 years has had a panel devoted solely to gathering evidence of sightings of the unexplained. The U.S. Air Force has also spent considerable time investigating unexplained phenomena in the sky, but like every other group doing this kind of work, there just have not been explanations that cover every situation. Some of the sightings have indeed been spectacular. 300 French sailors and civilians aboard submarines and at a weather station near the Caribbean island of Martinique watched a large luminous object circle and then disappear like a light bulb being extinguished. There have been dozens of such sightings around the world. Great astronomers like the late Carl Sagan believed it would be a matter of short time before we would find another human or non-human inhabitant form of intelligence in our universe, or an adjacent one. There is absolutely no reason to doubt our Belleville sighters. Please don't call them, though. When they reported their sightings, the whole world was interested and they got calls and visits until they were exhausted. They've told their story hundreds of times, so let them have a little peace. Odd lights seen over Marshfield. Wisconsin Rapids Daily Tribune, Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, October 1st, 2004. So it's unidentified and it flies, and it's an object. That simply means it's inexplicable, not that it's a UFO filled with little green women. In the past 2 weeks, Marshfield area residents have reported unusual lights and objects in the night sky, some accompanied by what looks like fighter jets. On the night of September 23rd, Eric Dickman sat on a bonfire with friends and family at his home in the town of Day. 3 lights in a triangle burned bright in the sky for about 4 seconds, and then they disappeared, he said last week. 10 minutes later, the bright lights reappeared and moved the same way, Dickman said. He said that what the 8 people at the bonfire saw that night was the same as what his son saw the Thursday before while driving south from Spencer. That sighting was accompanied by what looked like a fighter jet, he said. Dan Young of the town Cary, chief photographer at the Marshfield News Herald, said Thursday that he had seen similar lights on several occasions as recently as Tuesday. The lights moved close together, then went away, he said. Tuesday night, the white lights came close together, and I could see aircraft lights, kind of like warning lights, he said. I thought this was probably something that most likely could be easily explained after the second time. It looked like, my guess is, helicopters that came together in the sky and went their separate ways. About 95% of all Americans have heard or read something about unidentified flying objects, and 57% believe alien aircraft are real, according to a Central Intelligence Agency report in 1997. Otherworldly experience. Hoping to gather scientific evidence of the unexplained, an Eau Claire man's preoccupation with the paranormal leads him to scenes of reported sightings. Leader Telegram, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, May 14, 2000. Dusk settled over the Elk Lake Dam in rural Dunn County as Chad Lewis and Mike Cofield climbed down the bank to the creek's edge. The two carried still photography cameras, a video camera, and an electromagnetic field detector. This evening, they hope to gather scientific evidence of what some believe is a ghostly presence at the dam. I tried to go from a scientific view, said Lewis, 25, of Eau Claire. Lewis said he usually brings along a tape recorder when he is searching for presences to pick up any unusual sounds, and a thermometer to test for cold spots. Everyone has heard of the chill, Lewis said, pausing to take a picture of the dam area. The cold spot, you tend to get that quite a bit. Lewis is a member of the American Ghost Society and the state director of the Mutual Unidentified Flying Object Network, a nonprofit organization devoted to scientifically documenting unusual phenomena such as UFOs. He joined MUFON 7 years ago as a field investigator, looking into reported sightings. He became the state volunteer director 3 years ago and is responsible for investigating sightings, reporting cases to MUFON, and training new members. I always had an interest in the paranormal, said Lewis, who joined the American Ghost Society about 5 years ago. I had never heard of groups you could join. When he was about 5 years old and living in Eau Claire, Lewis's brother Todd said he saw a man in the basement. The family later learned that the former owner had committed suicide, which piqued Lewis's interest. Once you go on an investigation, it's hard to turn back. It's addicting, Lewis said, flashing his red-lensed flashlight around the banks of the dam, where 2 men reported seeing a presence last summer. It's the fascination with the unknown. We're not certain what happens after we die, he said. We're not certain if UFOs are man-made technology or extraterrestrial. Cofield, who hosts Backpage News on Eau Claire's public access TV station, said he had been on a dozen investigations with Lewis. He is skeptical enough, said Cofield, 39, of Eau Claire. He does not rush into saying it is this or that. He asks questions to get at least a blueprint of the situation. We're very fortunate to have someone like that who is close enough within a radius of Eau Claire and have him investigate with the expertise he does have. With recent interest in unexplained phenomenon, ranging from the X-Files TV show to the movie The Sixth Sense, people tend to be more accepting of unexplained sightings, Lewis said. When people find out Lewis investigates for MUFON and the Ghost Society, most have a story of an unexplained sighting or presence they have experienced. In the past 3 years, Lewis said more than 100 cases of unidentified flying objects have been reported throughout Wisconsin. A lot of the time, it is a natural phenomena or a civilian aircraft, he said. 5 to 7% of the cases remain unsolved. In September, a rural Menominee couple reported seeing 2 UFOs in Dunn County. The first object changed colors from red to blue to yellow and was going in circles and side to side. The second object pulsated yellow and was triangular shaped. Police believed the objects were reflections from planets, the northern lights, or possibly a helicopter. Lewis, who investigated the reported sightings, said the couple were sincere, credible witnesses, and the man was familiar with stars and planets. The Elk Lake Dam sighting last summer also qualified as unusual enough to get Lewis's attention. Once night had fallen, Cofield used a video camera panning across the area to see if the film captured anything unusual. Lewis checked his electromagnetic field detector but did not note anything unusual. But an unsolved murder in the area could offer a historical reason for the dam to have a ghostly presence. The body of Mary Schlase, 25, of Minneapolis, was found along a dead-end road February 15, 1974, in the Elk Creek area, Dunn County Chief Deputy John Canta said. Schlase was a University of Minnesota student who police believed was hitchhiking to Chicago. It is believed she died of multiple stab wounds. The case remains unsolved, but Canta expressed skepticism that the dam area could hold any unusual presence. He said Schlase had not been killed at the dam and was found some distance from the area. Although nothing turned up on the photos he took that night, the American Ghost Society keeps a running track of alleged sightings. Lewis will send a case report and any photos he has to the group for its records. Lewis said he believes it helps his credibility that he has a psychology degree from UW-Stout and is returning in the fall to work on his master's degree. That usually helps to give some credibility, so people don't think people that are investigating are kooks, Lewis said. He said that whenever he goes to a graveyard or another reported haunted area to gather evidence, he treats the site with respect. It does take a certain kind of person to go in a graveyard and actually want to see ghosts, he said. Police called tales of UFO sightings a hoax. The Whitewater Register, Wisconsin, November 20th, 2003. What began for Whitewater Police Chief Jim Cohn was a routine stop at the West Sider for a newspaper November 7th turned into an extraordinary event when the person working behind the counter casually asked Cohn if the police had figured out what the UFO was. The question was prompted by a flyer that recently circulated around town about a mysterious sighting by several UW Whitewater students and 2 members of faculty who were said to have seen some lights behind the football stadium between 9:30 and 9:50 p.m. on October 30th. It could be a hoax, or maybe a sighting of a solar flare, but one thing it probably is not, said Cohn, is a UFO. The flyer, which a West Sider employee said was delivered by an adult and not a person of traditional college age, was printed on paper without letterhead and claimed that 4 groups had reported seeing an object which they identified as a mysterious green and blue pulsating light coming from the nature trails. The flyer stated that some of the witnesses investigated the scene and claimed that as they approached, a bright circular object rose above the forest and vanished into the sky. The unknown authors of the statement asked that if anyone with information about the sightings contact the Whitewater Police Department. Cohn explained that the Whitewater Police Department was not involved in the crafting of the statement, its release, nor had their dispatcher received any calls on that night or any other about paranormal activity taking place in the skies above Whitewater. He suggested that because the alleged sightings were close to Halloween, there was a large potential that the whole thing was some sort of hoax. If there is any validity at all, it could have to do with a solar flare that was reported in the news lately, said Cohn. He was referring to a solar storm that was reported in USA Today on October 29th and October 30th. The storm reportedly hit Earth's magnetic field at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, October 29th. The storm was reported as extremely rare and capable of producing colorful auroras in the night sky visible as far south as Texas through Friday, October 31st. Sights and skies defy explanation. Are they back? The Belleville Recorder, Belleville, Wisconsin, April 3, 2001. Something really strange is taking place here in Belleville. At least 20 people have recently observed lights in the sky that defy normal description. All of the observations have been in the sky to the west of Belleville, and some in a west by northwest trajectory. The lights have been pretty uniformly described. There is one central bright, whitish-colored light which seems to disappear in the western horizon. Then there are extremely fast-moving, red, blue, and white lights that dart in different directions, away from the big light that almost looks like a beacon. Several people have brought the phenomena to the attention of the recorder. When we discussed the lights, they sounded somewhat familiar to those sightings that occurred back in 1986. Back then, for a several-month period, unexplainable lights and shapes were observed around the Belleville area. These sightings of unidentified flying objects got a lot of attention and gave rise to a fun celebration first held a few years back called Belleville's UFO Day. The sightings were anything but fun, though, for the witnesses at the time. The media picked up on the story, and soon it was all over the country and beyond. Channel 21, WHA, and Madison even did a documentary. There was a hearing of sorts held at the high school to try to sort out the information and make some sense of it. For those people who had been the chief witnesses, life was made miserable by well-meaning but often lacking in common sense enthusiasts who believed in UFOs and wanted more information. One individual got calls in the middle of the night from countries around the globe. It got so bad that this person found his only refuge in refusing to talk about the incident after a few weeks. In another case, a caravan of cars filled with UFO enthusiasts pulled up to one of the observers' homes on a Sunday and really made pests of themselves. At the recorder office, we can attest to the same kind of thing. We have had calls from almost every corner of the country about the sightings. Usually in October, around the time of our UFO Day, we can expect a rash of these calls. They have come from Sacramento, New York, Vancouver, Dallas, Denver, Wheeling, and a host of other cities. Many are from people legitimately interested in UFO phenomena, but then there are the calls from the crackpots as well, and they seem to take twice as long to respond to. Because of the many strange telephone calls associated with announcing the sightings of unexplained sightings back in 1984, we agreed not to use any of the names of the people we talked to. The sightings took place during the week of March 4th on at least 3 separate nights. They also repeated themselves several times during the evening. In all cases, the people watching the strange lights were not alone. In fact, in one case, a family of 5 and a visitor witnessed the sight. In another case, one of the observers had brought his camcorder along. He excitedly tried to get out of the car while the car was still moving to record the incident. This was not the best judgment, and by the time he pulled himself out of the ditch and made sure no bones were broken, the light had disappeared. In the case of the family, each person watching said the smaller, fast-moving red and white lights were in our atmosphere, yet there was no sounds of engines, no roar as if from a jet. The speed at which they moved was also hard to believe, and the other thing which made the sight strange is that they were basically in the same area. One of the observers, who has a military background and has done considerable traveling by air, said the sight was not something you could understand. This conclusion was reached after watching the lights dart back and forth for a considerable time. One of the other observers reported that the object traveled west to northwest and was very bright with red and blue lights which seemed to be floating side to side and up and down. The object had 5 or 6 very long and sharp-pointed arms, it seemed. The red and blue lights were around the center. A plausible explanation is that Venus could have been the big light that disappeared in the horizon. We called the UW Space Center, and they confirmed that they had been getting many calls about the one big light. Venus was very close to the Earth for most of March. It became more obvious in the early morning sky. A planet also would have given the impression of a stable or very slowly moving object. Because its orbit around the sun brought it very close to the Earth's orbit, it would also be very bright. That theory doesn't help explain the smaller lights that were darting about at closer distances, though. No one has come up with a plausible explanation for those. For sure, there are sightings that defy explanation, and those darting lights probably do much to support the sightings of years ago. Someday, hopefully, we will find an answer to the sightings of these mysterious, unidentified flying objects. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you liked it. Which state should I cover next for UFO sightings? Let me know in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with everything I post, and also it really helps my channel out. If you have your own scary story or close encounter to share, you can either send it in the comments, post it on my subreddit r/ihaveaspookystory, or send it to my Gmail, pinkpossiblystories@gmail.com. Good night, sleep tight, and don't let the shadows bite.